My name is Shakillia. I won't really kill you though. And welcome to my podcast where people submit their questions as we explore topics around philosophy, mindfulness, productivity, and personal development. Full disclaimer, I am not a licensed psychologist or therapist, but I've been through a lot in my own life, and I'm always happy to share my experiences and give empathetic advice. Just remember that this is not a substitute for professional help. If you're struggling with something serious, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional. I'm here to listen and offer support, but I'm not here to diagnose or treat any mental health conditions. I cannot guarantee a solution to your problem, but my goal is to help you feel understood and supported and to give you the tools you need to cope with whatever it is that you're going through. It's time to share my mental. So, I wanted to answer this and touch on this topic because it is something I struggle with, and I am sure I am not the only one. When faced with a situation, especially when it is a stressful circumstance, it is so easy to expect the worst and to get caught up in our negative thoughts. If you are anything like me, then it can seem like negative thoughts have taken over your life, disrupting your sense of joy, peace, and clarity. But the good news is there are some simple tools and strategies you can use. Oops, I just kicked the camera. But there are some strategies that you can use to shift your mindset and to move away from the negativity and become more empowered in your life. I am someone who has suffered from social anxiety and have often found it hard to gather the courage to interact with others, especially in a setting where there were a large crowd of people. I would always envision the worst possible scenario before I have even managed to take a step forward, and usually things have played out so bad up here in my mind that oftentimes that first step forward never happened. Hello, my name is never happened. Did you know that there is actually another term for this? I had only learned about it just this year. Let's kick things off by talking about catastrophizing. So, what is catastrophizing? Ever find yourself jumping to the gloomiest possible outcome, even when there's hardly any reason to? That, my friend, is what we call catastrophizing. It's like your mind puts on those doom and gloom glasses, and everything suddenly looks like a disaster movie, even when it's just a minor hiccup. You see, sometimes when we're faced with an upsetting situation, it's easy to feel like we're in the eye of the storm, even if it's more like a drizzle than a hurricane. If I fail this test, I'll never pass school and I'll be a total failure in life. If my partner leaves me, I will never find anyone else and I'll never be happy again. If I get sick, I'm going to die. That's catastrophizing doing its thing. But you know what? We all have those moments, and it's perfectly okay. The first step towards managing it, though, is to recognize it. So let's chat about how we can start taking off those glasses, shall we? But first, why do we catastrophize? Ever wonder why some of us have a knack for imagining the worst case scenario? Well, it's not just you and me. There are a handful of reasons why people tend to catastrophize. So let's chat about a few common ones. The first one is feeling low on self esteem. Okay? People with low self esteem often believe that they are not capable of handling difficult situations. As a result, they may catastrophize in order to avoid taking risks or facing challenges. The next is anxiety. Anxiety is a state of worry and fear, something I am all too familiar with. When when people are anxious, they tend to focus on the negative and imagine the worst possible outcome, and this can often lead to catastrophizing. And then you finally have trauma. If you've been through a traumatic event, it's natural to brace yourself for the worst. It's like your mind's way of protecting you from getting hurt again. Maybe you've been betrayed in a past relationship or had a rough time at your previous job. Each of these experiences can make you more prone to thinking negative, intrusive thoughts. Finally, there's learned behavior. If you grew up in a household where people were always catastrophizing, you may have learned to do the same. This is because you may have come to believe that catastrophizing is a normal way to think. Maybe you had parents who were always catastrophizing over money, or they motivated you with fear, with saying things like, if you don't go to school, you'll never amount to anything, or you will find yourself homeless and alone on the streets. It's important to remember that catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion. This means that it is a way of thinking that is not accurate or realistic. When you catastrophize, you're not seeing the situation for what it is. You are instead exaggerating the negative aspects and completely ignoring the positive ones. And this doesn't help. It only makes things worse. Catastrophizing is like setting up camp in a land of worst case scenarios. It's when we let our imagination run wild with all the things that could possibly go wrong, and it usually leaves us feeling worse in a number of ways. When you catastrophize, you are constantly worrying about the worst possible outcome, and this can lead to anxiety and depression, which can make it difficult to function in everyday life. I mean, it can interfere with your ability to problem solve. You're not able to think clearly or rationally, and this can make it difficult to come up with solutions to problems. It can lead to avoidance behavior. You may be tempted to avoid the situation altogether. This can prevent you from facing your fears and learning to cope with difficult situations. It can damage your relationships if you're constantly catastrophizing. It can be draining for the people around you. They may start to feel like that they can't do anything right, or that they're always walking on eggshells. For the longest time, I thought by thinking of the worst possible outcome, I was in some weird, twisted way protecting myself from getting hurt. When in reality, I was actually doing just that. I was hurting myself in more ways than one. So, what do? How can you turn off that little voice in your head that constantly tells you to expect the worst out of everything and everyone? Listen, you don't have to spend your days walking on eggshells, waiting for the sky to fall. You're not, oops, you're not a puppet in this grand show of life. You've got way more control than you think. Just by clicking on this video, you've shown that you're ready to take charge. How do you stop catastrophizing? Well, the first thing is to be aware of your triggers. What are the things that tend to trigger your catastrophizing? And once you know your triggers, you can start to develop strategies for coping with them. The next thing is to challenge your thoughts. When you start to catastrophize, ask yourself if there is, any evidence to support your worst case scenario. Is this true? Are you just jumping to conclusions? Are you ignoring any positive possibilities? And then you need to replace those thoughts with uplifting positive ones. You can do this by taking a piece of paper and drawing a line down the middle, Write all your negative thoughts on the left side, then challenge those thoughts with something positive on the right. Then take everything you wrote down on the right side and hang it up where you can see it every day and read it out loud to yourself for 30 days. Trust me, it works. When you start to catastrophize, it's easy to get caught up in the future and all the things that could go wrong. But it's important to focus on the present moment and what you can control right now. Accept the fact that you don't know what's going to happen next, and then let it go. I think it would also be very beneficial if you also practice mindfulness. And for those of y'all that don't know what mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. And there are many different ways to practice mindfulness. You can meditate, do yoga, or simply take a few minutes each day to focus on your breath. And if you need help, there are plenty of videos on YouTube. In fact, you can even click on the card above to check out my video on mindfulness to learn more. There's also a great app called Headspace that you can download from the App Store. I highly recommend. I am not sponsored. Then I think more than anything, probably the most important step is to just take care of yourself. Engage in activities that bring you joy and make self-care a priority. Treat yourself with compassion and kindness. Remember, breaking the cycle of negativity takes time and effort. But with each small step you take, you'll gradually find yourself expecting the best and embracing a more positive outlook on life. And if the whole catastrophizing thing is still feeling like a steep hill to climb on your own, remember that there are professionals out there who can lend a hand. Some folks shy away from therapy, thinking it's like waving a white flag that screams, "Something's wrong with me." But let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. There is nothing wrong with you. Therapy is just another tool in your toolbox to help you level up in life. But I get it, because sometimes it's the cost factor that might be a roadblock for some. And if that is the case, then try building a solid support network around you. Find a support system, whether that be in person or online. And if you want, dive into some self-help books. If you're curious about some good reads, give this video a thumbs up and I'll whip up a list of my top book recommendations. There was a time when I was the reigning champ of catastrophizing. If there was an Olympics for worst case scenario thinking, I'd have bagged the gold. I remember this one time when I was about to give a big presentation at work. The night before, I lay awake, my mind just spiraling into all sorts of terrifying scenarios, like, what if I forget everything? What if they laugh at me? What if I mess up so bad they fire me? I was so wound up in my fears that I could barely focus on preparing for the actual presentation. And you know what? It wasn't my best work. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I was too busy fighting imaginary dragons. I started practicing mindfulness, grounding myself in the present moment instead of getting lost in a maze of what ifs. I also started challenging my negative thoughts and flipping them into positive affirmations. Fast forward to today, and I can tell you it's made a world of a difference. I'm more focused, confident, and most importantly, happier. I still get nervous before big presentations, but now I channel that energy into preparation and practice rather than letting it spiral into fear. And I don't want anyone to sit here thinking, oh, well, she's nailed it. Nope, I am still on this journey. And I even have hiccups even to this day. I have moments where I tend to falter. But the important thing is to remain consistent and to keep going. And to also remember to be kinder to yourself and to take your time. If you also struggle with burnout, feel free to watch my other video to find out the best strategy for fighting off burnout when you feel sick. Sick? I meant stuck. Please don't be sick. If you found this video helpful and you have some questions that you would like to ask, then give the video a like and feel free to submit your question into my form. Link is in the description below. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.